There's still some folks coming into the physical classroom over here at the Teaching for Learning Center, as well as some folks join on Zoom. My colleague from the Writing Center, Amy, is over here, and she is admitting and muting, as we call it, one of the essential tasks of Zoom teaching. My name is Scott Christensen, and I have the wonderful joy of teaching in the business school. And so I'm a teaching faculty over there, and I teach things about information systems, project management, emerging technologies, and have a lot of fun doing it. I also direct our Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And so as in both of these roles, I'm very interested in new technologies, things that are going to change the world, and AI is something I've been looking at for many years. And we'll talk about a little bit of that history, but we want to talk about what is this whole thing called GPT chat. And Amy's going to talk at the end of this about some of the upcoming workshops, because this is not a one and done type of thing. We can't resolve any questions that everybody has today about this particular technology. And this is also a technology that's evolving. So it's going to be changing. And in fact, I was updating my slides this morning with some new information. Okay, so let me get to those slides. This is our agenda. Kind of why are we here? What's brought us together? Why do we have so many people interested in this topic right now? What is ChatGPT? How do the students kind of view this, or what might be some of the student motivations about this tool? Some quote unquote possible solutions if we think that this is a problem. Let's talk about some of the opportunities. If we do, where do we as teachers draw the line as far as how much AI is usable in our courses and how much is too much? What's coming next? Is this trending or trendy? Some of my own opinions about where this technology is going, and then hopefully questions and answers. Amy is also going to be taking questions, comments in the chat, and trying to moderate that along with some other folks. And that will hopefully build along with the Qualtrics survey you filled out and inform future conversations. Okay. Now, let me just tell you that about 3 years ago, in one of my large classes, I asked the students if they would submit to a little experiment. And that was, would they give me some of their papers that they had written for other courses and allow me to try to use an AI rewriter to rewrite those papers and then see if it would pass, turn it in. Well, at the time, about 10 students did this. They gave me their papers. We submitted them unaltered to turn it in, and yep, 100%, that's 100% plagiarized. Then we ran through these AI rewriters, and it would get it down to about 60% or so. So not very good, and the rewriting was not that great either. Okay? So it decreased the quality of the writing. Now today, what are we seeing in the headlines? Well, we're seeing just a couple of years later that there's all these headlines about how this program called ChatGPT is able to do all sorts of work that we would normally expect students to do, and is doing well enough that it would have received a passing grade. Now, all these articles point out that ChatGPT is a poor student, but it would pass, right? And when I saw a lot of these comments, when I was reading these articles, I was thinking about that old joke, what do you call the person who finished last in their class in med school? Doctor. Doctor, right, exactly. So while we might, as faculty, be very interested in having excellent writing and use writing as a tool, maybe not all of our students have the same motivations as we do. So my experience with this, when I kind of had an aha moment about a month ago, was when I started to look at how this tool might be used in my own classes. So in my large lecture classes, I sometimes use a short reflection paper assignment. It's graded pass fail, so it's just 1 or 2 pages. We just look at it and say, okay, would this get a B as a paper or not? And if it doesn't, we refer them to the writing center. We refer them to go back and rewrite it and allow them to resubmit. So it's not a writing intensive course, but we do this for watching some documentaries and things like that. I was able to put in a prompt, write a reflection paper about the film Coded Bias into ChatGPT, and it did a pretty good job of summarizing that film. Well, the student might need a little bit more than that to have a passing paper. So I also wrote, explain the problems of training data and facial recognition, one of the main features of that film. And then it does a pretty good job of summarizing. I realized that if a student had pasted these 2 things together and submitted them last fall, they would have gotten a passing grade. We would have not seen this as plagiarism. So that kind of triggered some alarm bells for me. Now, are students using this? Well, this came out right about the time that we were having our finals week, plus or minus. Okay. But other schools have had their finals after. So for example, Stanford, this is a survey of an anonymous poll. The pie chart on the left is showing about 4,500 Stanford students. And they asked them whether or not they used ChatGPT to help with their fall final assignments. And 17% said yes. Okay. A majority of those students that said yes, and now we're down to, we're still at about 4,500 respondents, said they used it for, I guess that's at 17% of that population there. About 60% use it for brainstorming, outlining, or forming ideas. This technology we'll talk about in a little bit what all it can do. It can actually answer multiple choice questions. So for example, you can give it the prompt, answer the following questions, and then you can just paste in 50 multiple choice questions, and it will answer those as best as it can. Submit written material from ChatGPT with edits, 7%, and some that just took it directly without any edits. Okay. So students appear to be using this. Do they know that they're doing something wrong? Well, I don't know if I believe these results entirely. Do you think ChatGPT is a violation of academic honor code? Several say yes, if you use it for anything more than ideas. Some say yes, even if you just use it for ideas, it is a violation of the academic honor code. Some say yes, if you submit it with no edits. 13% answered no, and another 13% were unsure. This is now down to 3,600 Stanford students. So I think faculty and students may have different lines for where things cross, right? If we are to believe this. So what is this program? Well, it is a machine learning algorithm. And a machine learning algorithm, I want you to think of as basically a prediction engine, a probability machine. It's going to give you what is the most probable result. In my class, we often talk about machine learning, and we will actually train a machine learning algorithm in the class. And we can have it recognize images. We can have it recognize patterns of movement. It's fairly easy to do, but it's always a prediction machine, right? So it's predicting, if I was trying to predict with a machine learning algorithm, whether this is a picture of a cat or a dog, it's a prediction machine using probabilities. So there's a 99% that this is a dog. There's a 1% chance that this is a cat. So it's not perfect, nor are we, right? So you see that thing scampering out there. Is that a possum or is that a cat? I think it's a possum. You think it's a cat. Okay, so once again, just these things as prediction machines. Okay, so GPT is an interesting prediction machine. What the heck does GPT stand for? Well, it's Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's been trained on the best of the internet, if you will. Now, I put best in quotes because I'm sure some of you know that Wikipedia has its own biases built into it. Right? So you may have a 2-sentence entry on an important female author from the 18th century, and you may have a 40-page entry on Thor from Marvel Comics, right? So there's bias built into just on what's written about in Wikipedia. Okay? But that's why you can't ask it things that are recent, because it's all prior to 2021. Natural language model, we don't have to use computer programming or anything like that to get data out of it. But it's still just a prediction machine. Now, I want you to note that you can ask it for unusual perspectives, and that will usually give you those things that are least probable or not the majority statistically of the answer. Okay. So I'm sure some of you have tried this already, but let's go ahead and try this out if we can. And I'm going to go over here and then get back to my Zoom. And so this is the interface once you log in. Okay, so here's some previous questions I've done. And I have write an essay about the use of metaphor in The Old Man and the Sea, using unusual perspectives. I'm sorry, for those of you who are here in the room, it's probably harder to see this. But it says in Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, so it has correctly identified what the old man in the sea is, right? Okay. And it has given me now some unusual perspectives. Okay, the sea is the old man's life, the metaphor of the fish. Okay, I am not going to ask my English colleagues whether this is an unusual perspective or maybe it's a common perspective. I'll leave it to them to judge. Another one that I asked it was about, tell me about the accomplishments of Theodore Roosevelt. Okay. And here we have, it has correctly identified the Theodore Roosevelt that was the 26th president of the United States, not the guy who is the dentist in Tallahassee. Okay, so it has knows what we're talking about here. If I ask you about the accomplishments of Theodore Roosevelt, there's a high probability I'm talking about the president, not the dentist, right? Okay, so once again, it's a prediction engine. And so this is interesting. It gives me some paragraphs that summarize things, not as many people pointed out, particularly creative, but you know, I think at least with this are accurate as far as I can tell. I've read a couple biographies there. Theodore Roosevelt. You can ask it to write an Instagram post. You can ask it to write a instructor contract. So it will try to write a contract. And I don't think our legal team here would allow us to use this contract. Right? But there's lots of things that you can do. And let's go ahead and let's do a new one on. What would you like to ask it?
Write a business plan for an Ethiopian restaurant in Columbia, Missouri.
Okay, right. Business plan for an.
I'll invest in that.
I can do
Let's see the screen. Get back to edit it there. Okay.
Leave the spelling mistake in. Let it see if it can figure it out.
Sometimes it'll come back and say it can't do that.
Wow.
There are limited options for Ethiopian banking. As far as I know, there are. Okay, okay, and we are even starting to talk about the menu. Relatively fast, right?
Oh, wow. When I asked it, it did not give those figures. It wouldn't give me figures. I asked it to, and it said, no, it's changed since like 3 days ago.
Okay, interesting. So what's interesting about this is that different people will get different answers. So that's also that example I showed for my students writing a reflection paper on coded bias. Every student's going to have a different output from this AI, and it will not flag it and turn it in. Yeah, I've not done that experiment, but another professor, it's all kind of anecdotal at this time. So there's not a scientific paper I can point you to, but it's pretty fast. So what I could have done instead, though, when I was working on this here, I could have said, answer the following multiple choice questions, and I could have pasted the multiple choice questions in there. So that's why some people, if you see things about GPT passing tests, okay, that's sometimes what it's doing. That's sometimes the prompt. And
So a question on chat as far as, does it provide references?
Fake ones, sometimes it makes them up and they're plausible and they might be from the right authors, but they might give, like they gave my husband's book the total wrong subtitle and gave a summary of the book that like wasn't at all what the book was about. It's really weird. It's this hybrid between parts of it are right and parts of it aren't on the citations when it's asked to provide citations.
And I would wonder if Wikipedia, if you were to look up that book on Wikipedia, if that has that error in it, or did at the time it was trained. So, you know, that because that's where it's getting its data. So it's only as good as what it's trained on.
But it also has my husband working at the University of Nevada, Reno, and
He's got a gig on the side you don't know about.
which he does not. And, but what is in Reno is somebody with our same very unusual last name who recently ran for city council.
Yeah.
That's the only connection that we could see, that it was kind of like, well, where am I seeing the most about Breckus?
Right.
Well,
So it's once again, it's a probability. So if you also say, tell me about the professor that is at the University of Missouri, Columbia, named Wayne Breckus, that might do something different. So I asked it about myself, and there's apparently, this is, you know, very disturbing, a more famous J. Scott Christensen out there that works in California as a lawyer. Okay. And
yeah,
so,
that wouldn't surprise me. That they would get a different one wouldn't surprise me. But there is no Wayne Breckus at that university at all. Like it just sort of glommed it together of different parts of Breckus that are floating around.
We do have a question if you're wanting a question from chat to put
Okay.
in the chat. Oh, and I just lost it.
well, let's move ahead just a little bit because I'm worried that we may just stay here. So let's talk about, yeah, so we just did that. Who owns that content? Well, that's interesting question. The Copyright Office has actually revoked copyright for several things that were AI generated, AI art. And they have said that AI itself cannot own any content because it has to have human generation. And you can't claim that I now own that business plan and copyright it because I wrote the prompt or because someone else wrote the prompt, okay? That is creating a lot of consternation. JAMA, yesterday, I think it was, came out with their instructions for authors that have been updated because they realized that Some people, especially non-native English speakers, might want to use these tools to actually write abstracts, their lit review, different parts of their paper. Because you can, there's also the ChatGPT, which is the free version. There's also GPT-3, which is the engine behind this, and you can actually train it with specific data and then get the output you want. So I could enter all my papers that I wanted to have a lit review on, and I could then train that AI on it. Like that. So they are actually coming out and saying, hey, you can't like share the content, share the credit, but you have to put it in the acknowledgement section that you acknowledge, and that ChatGPT or an AI was used to write this, and you have to take full responsibility for any errors. Okay, so that's we're starting to see guidelines changing for academic journals. So what are some of the student motivations? We showed that kind of horrific survey from Stanford. You know, I think that sometimes we forget how hard it is to get a first draft down. I was talking with Dean Tarko before class because I took his humanities course, and Ann McGowan was the one of the professors for that, or the instructors for that. I remember because I was an undergraduate student and we had to do a lot of writing. I spent a lot of time in her office. Okay, writing did not come easy to me. I learned to love writing later. Okay, so sometimes it's hard for us to appreciate how tempting this must be. I mean, this is, you know, a very tempting thing to use. And I have anecdotally had students say that they know of somebody that has used this. Okay, they often don't look me in the eye, so I suspect it was them. Now, some people have argued, well, this is just like a calculator moment. Okay, so I remember not being able to use a calculator on my exams. I'm not sure if we were even allowed, I think maybe we were allowed a 4-function calculator on our SATs and things like that. Okay, but some people had say, well, we're just going to evolve. Now, I would counter that, and I think a lot of folks would say that math is not a thinking tool used by most people. Okay, I'm sure our scientists and our mathematicians use math as kind of a thinking tool. I don't know that I do, but I certainly use writing as a way to think, synthesize, combine things together in new and interesting ways. So that's really kind of the danger here. Now, if we were to just take an approach that we want to stop this plagiarism, well, what could we do about it? What are some possible solutions? Well, we could do intense review of submitted assignments. Okay, we could say, oh, I am the expert. I could determine whether these were written by an AI or not. Unfortunately, that's probably not the case. This came out in Nature within the last month. A chatbot wrote medical research that managed to fool experts. Medical researchers were asked to spot the fakes. They identified 32% of the AI generated abstracts as real, and like 14% of the genuine abstracts as phony. Okay, so we are not probably that good at recognizing what's the difference. We could use a detection tool. So there are, in fact, tools out there to detect this. So one that got a lot of press in the last couple of weeks has been GPT-0. Okay, and you can put in content, you can put in text, and it will analyze it. And in this case, it says your text is most likely to be AI generated. It's not a definitive result. It says it's most likely. Now, how does this work? It uses two concepts, perplexity and burstiness. A perplexity measures the complexity of the text. Okay. So humans tend to write more complex sentences. Sometimes that's not good, but for clarity, but we tend to do that. Also burstiness. Okay, so this idea of the variation in sentences. Like a really good sentence, and then you got a poor sentence, you got active voice, so forth and so on. So it looks at these two things and then tries to make a determination, the likelihood that it was AI generated. Now, I take a hard line on cheating in my classes. This is probably the one thing that I really will not budge on, right? Because it destroys our brand, our Mizzou brand. If you want an extension on an assignment, you want an extension on a test, you betcha. Happy to give you one of those. Okay, so I'm fairly lenient on everything else except for cheating. I would have a hard time saying, boy, I'm going to report you to the provost and I'm going to fail you in my course because I used this program that was written by a 22-year-old Princeton student, and that is telling me that you cheated. I don't think I can do that with a good conscience. Okay, so I'm not sure that there's a way to really detect this, at least one that I feel comfortable with. I would also say it's probably just a matter of moments before there's some sort of website where you can go to put in your text and it will add a bit of, you know, variation here to fool this. Also, this is from that same Nature article. The AI, they tried to use a computer to detect whether a computer had written the text, and the computer was even worse at detecting the output. So here's an example from another professor. He ran this through this GPT-0, and it said it's not AI generated. If you actually read through this, you'll start to see that last paragraph is not quite as good. Okay. And if you, in fact, eliminate it, then it says, oh yeah, this is probably AI generated. And there was an update this Sunday to that GPT-0 that will highlight the sentences. This is from that Princeton grad. They will highlight the sentences that it thinks are written by. I applaud this student. I think that's great. I hope he gets $1 million job at Google or Microsoft. But once again, I would be hard pressed to say I'm going to take an action against the student based on this, because I also don't know how it works. Okay, can't see into it. Something like Turnitin, I can see the raw evidence, right? I have some evidence there. I can contact the other instructor, verify with them. Yesterday, I think it was, OpenAI, the company behind this product, also released a classifier. However, they say our classifier is not fully reliable. In our evaluations on a challenge set, our classifier correctly identifies 23% of AI written text and true positives, while incorrectly labeling human written text 9% of the time. So it's kind of like whack-a-mole here, if you're going to go down this road. Okay, so these tools are not validated. They're created by individuals sometimes, don't provide sources, references to back up the probable use of this GPT chat or ChatGPT. Also, post-generation modifications to text can provide bad results. So that's my conclusion of this. Now, what are some people doing? Well, some professors have taken to using Google Docs and making all their students write in Google Docs, because you can see over a timeline how they have written. You can see the work developing. You can see large-scale pasting of text. However, you're probably going to get things like, oh, I used Pages because that was on my Mac to write everything while I was at home, and then I pasted it into Google Docs, and that's where it came from. So I'm not sure that that's flawless. I think you could make that work if you are willing to track that and actually investigate. You can have students write in the class, right? So whatever company makes Blue Books, let's go buy some stock because maybe Blue Books are back. That vending machine over in Memorial Union will finally get some use that has the Blue Books in it. And some people are actually saying, well, I'm going to go back to writing. Now, where do we draw the line? And I will try and get to questions here. I know we got a bunch of them here as well as remotely. Okay. So Grammarly is AI driven, okay, used by faculty and students. Generally, I would say, grammar, spelling, that's okay. At least it is in my class. Microsoft Word, Outlook does sentence completion. Is that plagiarism when I hit tab and it completes my sentence? Probably not, but I think a lot of people would say no. Well, let's look at something called lex.page. Okay, so excuse me while I change my screen share again. So this is lex.page. It's kind of like Google Docs. So you're just going to have to bear with me for a little bit. Growing a garden can be very useful. It helps you get some good food for your table and family, and also can help you relax. Gardens are a lot of work, however. They require, oh, wait a second, I don't know what to write next, so I'll do 3 pluses. And it does paragraph completion. So it requires regular watering, fertilizer, and regular weeding. And that's giving me the steps for planting the garden, because it knows that I have started this essay on planting the garden. Is this cheating? It is, okay, so it is. My students go like this at this point. Some of them say no, because I would have to, each one of these, I would have to write more on. It's just helping me outline. I'm saying this is going to get incorporated into all sorts of tools. Okay, this is not going to remain isolated on this one website. This is actually using GPT-3 in the background. This has been around for a while. So what it's doing is if I'm writing an essay, it's following along and it's getting trained on what I'm writing. And if I'd gone farther and written several paragraphs, it would have done better. Okay. On its paragraph completion. So I think that's difficult because I think Microsoft has made at least a $10 billion investment in the company that makes Chat GPT. And they are going to bring these tools to Microsoft Word. People in business are using this already. They see that it's a great opportunity. I think we can't just say it's going to be this website. Okay. So we just did it. Okay. This is a movie in case it didn't work. Yes, every computer writing tool is going to use AI to some degree. There are more tools every day. There's a website called There's an AI for that. You can just Google that, you'll find it. And faculty are using this as well. And so faculty are also using this. So what's next? Well, as I mentioned, Microsoft has put a lot of money into this. So think about Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, drafting whole emails for you in Outlook. I don't know about you, but email is the bane of my existence. Next time my chair wants some report on something, really tempting to use something like this. Okay. Get rid of mundane workplace tasks. So maybe this AI will be built into our operating systems. Okay. Change the way search engines work. Google is somewhat worried about this because instead of right now, I have to do a Google search and I then have to go to these websites and review the content. Instead, I'm just going to ask it, how do I fix a Kenmore such and such dryer? just tell me how to do that instead of me having to watch a bunch of videos. And in fact, this is from yesterday. They plan to bring this technology into Bing, which is their search engine. So we're gonna have to start saying, have you tried Binging that instead of Googling that soon, maybe? Microsoft's not gonna make the same mistake twice with their search engine business. They're going to take advantage of this technology and play. Okay. So that's Scott's opinion.
What about, what is it, Swallow, Google's answer to it that's supposed to be a more grown-up version of ChatGPT?
I don't know.
I think that's pineapple filling. Thank you. You're welcome.
So what are some of our opportunities here? Well, we could just use AI and teach it as an emerging skill. How do you use AI to write? Case was NPR reported on a that was did a report on a professor that was just using this in their class. We could have students use ChatGPT to draft outlines, to summarize material. I think it's going to be very interesting in finance to enable financial transparency. So you know how you have to sign all these documents when you buy a house or get a loan, and you try to understand what they mean, but you don't understand really all of that. What if you fed those documents into a system like this and said, explain it to me like I'm a third grader? What am I about to sign? Because there's a lot of positive applications. Using this as a tutor. I saw this was on a student forum on for people who are studying for their project management exam. And the student said, please make me a story to remember the following list: integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholders. And so then it made a story about this king and maybe would help that student remember. It's a kind of an interesting way to think about it. And some people see, well, okay, that's fine. This is going to just going to cause us to reboot education. I don't think that's really true, but there's some people out there saying that, well, this will bring about the change in education that we need. This is going to become a political football as well. So is this trending or trendy? This is my opinions here. I say, I don't say forget it, but we should not be as worried about this. We should be worried about AI. Okay? AI is already used in grading tools. I know that one of my professors uses that, and I'm very confident that professor uses it well in an appropriate way. Whether all professors will or not, I'm not sure. Some institutions are using AI to screen applications to come to their school. Facial recognition is used on some campuses by the cameras for security reasons. In my opinion, our institution needs some sort of review board to talk about how we're using AI on campus. It's my soapbox here. I'm trying not to get too much of my soapbox, but there's lots of ways that AI is going to come into our lives. It's not just in writing. Now, I know there's a lot of questions and answers, a lot of things you want to talk about here. And I guess we'll kind of open it up to discussion.
And maybe start some of you in the room, because I know we've got some, we can kind of go back and forth. So
Hillary?
Yeah, so my question has to do with Grammarly. So like I know I have a lot of friends that use Grammarly, especially non-native speakers, right? So if my friend writes a paper, but she's using Grammarly to fix her English, then she turns it in and it gets screened by, let's say, GPT-0 or something like that. Is it going to be flagged as
I haven't seen any of that. No, I haven't seen that with Grammarly. No. Yes.
I'm curious what the consensus would be on the ethics of using AI as a teaching tool. For example, if you were to put in learning outcomes for a new course and asked it to write learning objectives for each class, it feels disingenuous and like plagiarism, but at the same time, it might structure the course better for the students.
Or maybe
Can I
take,
expand on that, or it might be a way, if I'm understanding how it works correctly, that you could, that's almost like a really quick way to do a search of how most people are structuring a class on that topic. So then maybe you save some time with research, and then you can use it as a tool for that, and then modify it to fit what you want your class to actually look like. I mean, I'm theoretically.
or you could take the learning objectives of all the classes the student takes, train an AI and say, summarize what the student knows. That'd be interesting.
And if we do that, what basis do we have to tell students not to do it on their assignments?
I don't know. This should be called question and question, not question and answer. Yeah, Rachel.
I've been watching my husband and some of his friends on Facebook. He's a sociology professor. I'm a librarian, so he's the one who's doing actual teaching, and he's in contact with a lot of graduate students who do actual teaching. And they've been throwing some prompts in, the kind of essay question type things. And what they're finding is that ChatGPT is one, excellent, of course, at having, the good the Grammarly part of it, right? The well-structured English part of it. But what it's really falling down, and it's also not bad, but I would say buggy or sometimes incorrect about the factual parts of things. Like, for example, we asked it the other day about, tell me about a green mamba. And it gave the wrong scientific name. And it just flat out gave wrong information that you could easily Google and get the right answer from authoritative sources. So there's that, but then on other things, but it's pretty good at explaining, certain kinds of theory. And it can even do, analyze X thing according to that theory. It can do that some, unless you have current pop examples, or tell a student to analyze some part of their own life based on such and such theory. I mean, I think there would be ways to make ChatGPT kind of, act as if you're a student and this, that, but it does sort of spit out, I don't have experiences, I'm an AI,
Yeah.
So, so it seemed like when you have to relate it to very recent stuff, I think because of the 2021
Cut off, yeah.
cap.
Yeah.
But how long is that gonna last?
So, yeah, remember when I started out this little talk about how I used these AI writers 3 years ago? They weren't very good, okay? Well, here we are now. We're not used to things improving at exponential or geometric rates, and computers aren't always improving at that rate, but sometimes they do, or at least don't do strictly linear improvements. So where are we going to be 3 years from now? Okay, so that's why I say we really need to start to think not just about this one tool, but how AI is going to be used in lots of areas of education, not only in the classroom, but throughout our institution. That's my opinion, but it is going to improve. And so you just wait a couple of years yet.
Is this also happening at the high school level, which affects the quality and quantity of reading and thinking and reasoning skills that students will come to college with? I can't imagine that that's going to be anything but something to be concerned about or bring up.
Yes, the New York City schools, I don't know if it's just in the Bronx, but several, I think maybe the entire school system there, blocked this website from their computer systems. That was just like a month ago, 3 weeks ago.
I will say, Ted, that I know that the media specialists with Columbia Public Schools, in fact, they might even be joining us here.
Oh,
A couple of them, they've already been doing presentations with their
Great.
staff to address this. And I would say very similar to some of the things we're talking about here,
Yeah.
rather than banning it altogether. It's like, how do we use this as part of our learning? But as teachers, how do we use that as part of our planning really good instruction?
thank you.
Are there groups that are already coming up with ethical standards for using this?
I'm not aware. I think it's just, JAMA is the first one that I've seen that's come out, the kind of scholarly research.
Just thoughts aloud. I think finding it would be extremely difficult, because if someone comes up with a program that fights against it, then the model can be trained on
Sure.
that, and it would just become better. I think we kind of need to learn how to live with it, because maybe when the internet also started, maybe Professor, you remember, maybe there was similar question that
Right,
people would stop reading books,
right.
but now we've been living with it for a long time. I think we kind of need to learn how
Thank
to
you.
live with it.
Thank you.
And as far as the standards question, I don't know that I would call it policies or standards, but I know that our different organizations nationally are coming out with statements, kind of some. So Association of Writing Across the Curriculum, they have published their statement. So really, it's more like guidelines, recommendations.
Other questions, or were there kind of general sentiment from the online folks?
There's been some interesting things, and I don't know, Christy, if you wanted to unmute and share any of the overall, or if there's any questions we've not yet addressed from our chat. Putting you on the spot, Christy.
We're having a really good conversation in the chat. I want to highlight Carolyn's question that I think is a good one. It's more of a comment, not a question, I think. I wonder if this is detrimental to students, and then it makes teachers suspicious of students. That would not be fair to honest students. So she's sort of highlighting the subjectivity. So I think that's a good point that we were talking about that plays into the ethics question that was just posed. I don't see any others that aren't addressed. Julie, do you see any?
There was the question that, and really good conversation on the chat, which will also be recorded, so you all can go and see it in the room here, but about what might be the implications for computer courses, courses on coding, just more of like general education requirement for our students. And Christy, I think you also posted that this is most likely something that may be happening. And I don't know if any of you have any news on that either, but.
Yeah, I don't know, but you can ask it to write computer programs. So I asked it to write a C program to do certain things, and it would do it for me. It was fairly simple. Then I asked it to write a C program that would determine the current location of Mars. And it said, I can't do that, but here's the steps you would need to do that. I don't know if that's true. I'm not, an astrophysicist or not, so I'm not sure if that's true, if it was truthful or not, but at least gave me an outline of what one might believe would be the steps involved. So I think for very simple computer programs, this will be very useful.
Guy's posting an interesting question about what are faculty and visual disciplines saying about the possibilities of their students using generative AI apps?
Like for art? Anybody in that field? So if you haven't seen, these other apps, this is, we can write a painting of a cup of coffee.
At the Ethiopian restaurant. that we just
I'm embarrassed, I can't spell Ethiopian. A painting of a cup of coffee in a rainstorm in the style of Picasso. Okay, and so this is the type of thing that you can, you use Unsplash or use Pixabay for your images in your PowerPoints. Well, now you could just ask PowerPoint, please put in an image, that looks like this. And you can say a photo. I could have said a photo. You could try that as well. Thanks. So.
Yeah, I tried, I got some just ghoulish results. I did like an African-American kid sitting at a table reading a book, and like their face was all distorted. It was.
Yeah, it does a really bad job with people. It does have this really distorted images of people. I don't understand it, but yeah. You do paintings sometimes, it's.
I managed to make a pile of books really creepy too, because there's always some part of the book that was like not connected right. It was
So this is Dolly, and you can try this out as well. You just create an account on OpenAI. Oh, it's not, it's probably doesn't like the in the style of Picasso when I said a photo. It's probably screwed with it. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's not just about writing, it's in the visual arts as well. But I think especially when we get into certain areas, it's going to be very difficult because we don't understand exactly how it's trained on things. Sometimes we call the layers inside of an AI a black box because we can't really identify why it came with that outcome. And there's an entire field in research called adversarial AI, which actually looks at tricking AIs. And you can actually do that by introducing some noise into some of the images you're trying to classify. So the classic example, okay, there we go. That one isn't too bad.
Restaurant's going to be a success.
Yeah. So maybe we should just all quit our faculty jobs and start a restaurant. Is that what I'm doing? Yes.
What about mathematical or scientific writing? Can a scientific sounding paper that uses formulas and equations?
Yeah, so that was the paper I cited from Nature, where they were actually using that to write abstracts. So you write your paper and then you say, oh, she's now got to write an abstract about that. Well, just feed it your paper and then it'll write the abstract. Yeah. And that was where they tried to see if you could detect that or not. So here's a photo of the talking ring. So yeah, it's going to affect all fields. And once again, it's not just going to be this big multi-billion-dollar company. Typically, these technologies become democratized with time. So there's going to be lots of people that are going to be doing this, and it's not just going to be US-based companies. Okay, so you can imagine other companies around the world that may be more nefarious. I also had a student that was kind of interesting. I was talking with him and he said, well, you know, some students will pay somebody to write their essays, right? So they'll pay them $50 to write their essay. This is a democratizing event where now I can have my essay written too. I'm poor, I can't afford them. $50 for my essay. So once again, I'm thinking that faculty and students have different perspectives on this. So I feel like I've just thrown a grenade into the Zoom here. And I'm about to leave and say that Amy is going to tell us about some of the upcoming workshops that are going to be involved.
Yes. So on Monday, and this one will be 3:30 to 4:30. That session is called Prompt Engineers Across the Disciplines. Tori Mondelli and a team of people will be leading that one, and that's going to be more of some ways to what might this look like? What might we be doing in our classrooms to develop some really wonderful ways to engage students? And Tori, if you're on, do you want to jump in and say a word about that?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, so Monday, what we're hoping to do is take some of your ideas and questions, you know, about how this might look in your discipline for teaching and really get in the sandbox with it. I believe that as educators, we need more practice. We have to hone our skills at developing imaginative, effective, and productive prompts for teaching and learning. There was a thread of today's conversation, you know, about partnering with students and embracing a tool rather than fighting a tool. I think we can continue that conversation on Monday and going forward. I think there's going to be a lot to be said around more transparency in teaching and learning. If you attended Teaching Renewal Week, you may have attended the Academic Integrity Panel. Amy was one of our panelists. And that thread is also going to continue through this semester and for our Celebration of Teaching conference. You see the way it really comes together with a lot of the ethical questions we're raising and digging into now with the AI and ChatGPT. maybe we'll touch on that a little bit on Monday, but we'll probably have more dedicated sessions for that conversation thread. There is so much to discuss. There is so much to explore and practice, and we really have to lean on each other. So on Monday, we'll be in a large group like this where we'll have cross fertilization across the disciplines, but then we will be moving to disciplinary clusters because our math faculty, our STEM faculty will have, particular ways of wanting to approach this versus our artists and our poets, and so on and so forth. So we're really excited, to get in those disciplinary affinity groups also and see, what we can learn. Thank you again. Looking forward to Monday.
Thanks, Tori. Also next week, 1 week from today on Thursday, February 9th, 2 o'clock. So same time, same places right now, only next week. And we'll be holding a session in here and on Zoom. Campus Writing Program will be running that session. So it's really going to be geared towards what does this mean for our writing intensive courses? Even if you are not teaching writing intensive courses, you're welcome to join. But that's where we will look at, how we are assigning writing, how we are assessing writing. What does this look like? How do we think about this? What kind of assignments might get to that really unique, complex, critical thinking we want to see anyway? And this is just a good time for us to really come together and share ideas. But in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out with questions, ideas. I love it. I'm every day getting an email of, well, I'm trying this with this assignment. We want to learn from one another. So please continue sharing that. And we will continue building these sessions for the rest of the semester. Okay.
Amy, I thought Scott made a very interesting point, that there should be a campus-wide group that comes up with policies and procedures and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, if others feel that same way, but I think that somehow forwarding that idea to the provost or something would be a really good idea.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And we are, I don't know, Zoomers, if you heard that, but Ted was mentioning the importance of having more of a campus-wide policy committee.
Especially as this all evolves and becomes bigger and more
Yeah.
encompassing.
And I know
once
some of you on
and,
here are
like I
interested.
said, my soapbox is that, it's, what if AI tools get added into, grading and, people are using that correctly, but then we have an adjunct that's not using it correctly, or we have, it starts to get added into our admissions. Are we now baking in, maybe we're trying to eliminate bias that humans have, but maybe we bake in other biases. So, I think it's difficult. I raised this with our President Choi 2 years ago when we started to have Microsoft Cortana, those little emails you get about, hey, would you like to do this? Well, it's an AI that's reading your email. And you can't turn off the AI, you can turn off the notifications. So it's seeping and creeping into our lives, whether we like it or not. So great. Well, thank you. It's always an honor to get to share, and especially with my colleagues and people that I've learned so much from. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to speak, and thank you for being so patient. Reach out to me if I can be of any help. So
Thank you,
otherwise,
Scott.
yeah, no problem.